Hi, everybody. I want to welcome you to this first Test Your Business Model class. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about customer segments and just give you an overall introduction to the business model canvas and how we use it here at ASU in the Entrepreneurship and Innovation Group. So, most of us watching this are probably thinking about how or why should we start this business? And that's one of the things that we really want to focus on through the Test Your Business Model class. But what I want you to think about first as we start the lecture is, who are we? What is the basis or the purpose of our business idea? And so as you look at these slides, I want you to think about how you would fill in the three blanks at the bottom of this slide. We sell blank to blank who need blank. And if you just take a few minutes here and think about what words or what different topics go into those blanks, we start to develop a value proposition and a purpose statement for your startup. Your value proposition is the first blank. We sell blank. That's the problem that you solve and the solution that you have. Two are the customer segments. These are the people who need your product. And the problem is in the third blank. Who has a problem that needs to be solved? So as you think about these different topics, that'll kind of give you an intro or an opening to the things that we're going to talk about in this class. So what is the business model canvas? We're going to talk today about how we get from a canvas that looks like this to a canvas that looks like this. Now, this isn't something that is easy. It takes a long time, and you're not going to be able to fill out all the boxes in one sitting. But what we're going to try to reach for is creatively going out and finding out exactly what we can do to try to provide a value proposition to our customer. So these are kind of the tips, the tricks, the hacks, and the ahas that come with using the business model canvas. We're going to talk about who developed the canvas, why the canvas was developed, what goes in the canvas, how to use the canvas, and the where do we find all of this. So that's what you're going to learn today. The who starts with Alexander Osterwalder and a couple of his partners and about 470 contributors that built this book around offering tools for designing, reworking, understanding, and implementing business models. Now, the emphasis of this is the word tools. Okay, the business model canvas is a tool. It's something that helps you create a path towards creating a successful company. What I can tell you from using the business model canvas is that unless you know how to use it, it can really be really suck a lot of time out of what you really should be doing. So we're going to talk a little bit about that as we go through today. The who's. This wasn't actually on the other slide, but there's a lot of people that are actually using the canvas that aren't startups. And you can see a whole bunch of different companies, different Fortune 500 corporations, federal agencies that are using the business model canvas, not only to help them figure out, do we want to do a startup or do we want to invest in a startup, but is this a new line of business that our company should take on? So there's a lot of people who are using this right now. Why do we use the business model canvas? Now, this is really important, okay? For years and years, we've had sort of a debate between the old school business plan and the new business model canvas. And we want to talk a little bit about why we do that. We know that business plans are great for execution. This is something that business plans have been around for a very long time. But business plans assume that you have all the right answers. What we've learned is that startups don't have the right answers. Most of the time, startups aren't even asking the right questions. And what we know from experience is that spending days, weeks, or months on a business plan based on incorrect assumptions is a tremendous waste of time. And having a great business plan that's based on incorrect assumptions, a well-polished, flashy, great business plan with wrong assumptions in it is going to lead to somebody investing in you and having an unsuccessful startup, and that's a tremendous waste of money. So the reason we're doing this is to save you time and save you money, just like you do with your customers. So what is it? This is what it looks like. There's 9 boxes. We start with value propositions and customer segments. We talk about customer relationships and channels. We've got revenue streams, cost structures, key resources, key activities, and key partners. And these are all different elements that someday will go into your business plan. But for right now, we're just going to use this as a map to help us figure out if we should even start the company. So one of the ways that we look at the business model canvas is the front of the store and the back of the store. So on the left side of the canvas, you see key partners, key activities, key resources, cost structures, and value propositions. On the other side, we see customer relationships, channels, and customer segments and revenue streams. So on the left side, we have the back of the store, and on the front side, we have the front of the store. So here's how we look at this. I grew up playing with Legos. I loved Legos. When I aged out at like age 14 with Legos, it was like very depressing for me. I didn't, now today we actually have adult Lego groups, so I can actually not be shamed to get back into that. But the Lego store is one of the coolest places. I love going to buy Christmas gifts for my, and birthday gifts for my nephew because it gives me an excuse to go in there and check things out. So the front of the store looks nice, it's polished. It's the part of the store, the part of the business that the customer sees. On the back of the store, it may not be quite that clean and quite polished. And so the type of cubicle or desk that you see there in that picture is the reality of startups. They're not very glamorous. There's a lot of work involved. There's lots of hours. And there's a lot of things that the customer doesn't see that we have to do in order to make the company be successful. So as you look at the canvas, you can see the back of the store on one side and the front of the store on the other side, and that's one of the ways we talk about that. The how. So here's the how of the business model canvas. As you look at the prompts that are in this slide and the numbering of the different blocks, what I'm going to show you today will be a little bit different than the numbering that you see on the blocks. And it really doesn't matter which order that you go in. The order that I'm going to give you is the way that works best for me, that makes the most sense to me, and that I think is the easiest, one of the tricks and ahas that I had from working with this. But if you look at these questions in this canvas, sometimes it's not offering a lot of assistance or clarity to figure out what you're supposed to do. So we're going to walk you through today some of those tricks and tips to help you figure this out. The most important piece of this are these blocks right here, the value propositions and the customer segments. What I've learned, and what most of the people that I've worked with have learned, is that you can stand and stare at the wall and for hours try to figure out what goes in each box. You can throw Post-it notes around, you can move things around. I've seen it for years. We stand at the wall, we stare at the big jumbo business model canvas, and we try to figure out what goes in each box. And what I can tell you is that that doesn't work, okay? What you have here are 2 blocks that are the most important: value propositions and customer segments. You don't need to worry about that, and you don't need to worry about those. If you get those 2 blocks right, you'll find out the rest of the blocks kind of start to fill themselves out. And I always start with value propositions and customer segments, and I actually think it's easier to start with customer segments, which is the opposite of what you see on this slide. So just want you to take a minute or two, and there's no wrong answers here, but just fill out this canvas and ask the question, fill out this block, customer segments, and try to answer the question, who are my customers? Many of us have an idea for a solution or a technology or a business where we think there's certain people, certain customers that we would be able to attract. And for me, I think it's easiest to just sit down and say, okay, for my technology, who are the people that I think would want to use that? And so take a minute, write down as many as you can think of, just brainstorm 10 or 12 different customers that you think would have an interest in your product. Take a couple of minutes to do that, and then we'll take the next step. So as you're doing that, let me give you a couple of good examples of customer segments. These are all customer segments that we've talked about in the startups that I've worked with here at ASU. Some good examples are soccer moms. We've got directors of purchasing, college students, marketing managers, singles, very popular with the college crowd, restaurant managers, soybean farmers, certified athletic trainers, valets. And what you'll notice about these examples is that they're all actual people. So here's where the trick for this box comes in. When you identify your customer segments, you want to think of this as a title on somebody's business card, okay? What we don't want are organizations like the Department of Defense, like the university, anything that's states, countries, companies. These are all examples that make identifying our customer segments more difficult. We want to think of it as somebody's title on a business card. This was the aha moment for me on this block. I found that if I started thinking about my customer segments as directors of purchasing, as college students, as certified athletic trainers, as what their title on their business card might look like, this process got much, much easier. So what I want you to do is go back and look at your customer segments. Are they people? Are they titles on a business card? And can you adjust them so that they're specific? That's the first step in getting the right customer segments put on your block. So let me give you one example of a drone company that I've worked with here over the last couple of years. We went through our business model canvas, and a lot of people don't like, I got in trouble once for using ink on my canvas. And I was told, no, you're only supposed to use Post-its or use pencil and whatever. And honestly, that's not how I work. I like to have things right out in front of me. I like to circle, cross out, star. That's how I look at things visually, and it helps me out. And it also tells me where I've been, so that if I think of something and then, hey, that wasn't a very good option, I can always come back to it, as opposed to losing my Post-its behind the desk or in my backpack or wherever those things disappeared to. So that's the other tip that I'll offer you on this slide as well. Don't be afraid to write these out, write things in ink, circle them up, cross them out, use different colors, and know that once your canvas gets so busy that you can't read it anymore, you just start a new canvas. So for this particular startup, our customer segments were grocery distributors, farmers, grocery and vegetable buyers, big farmers. We took big farmers all the way down to Montana wheat farmers, Yuma lettuce farmers, crop insurance providers and adjusters, crop researchers, soybean farmers, pollination of tree crop farmers, and the Forest Service. So what we tried to do here is ask the question, who in the agriculture community might need or want to use a drone? And this was the list that we started with. This actually took place. We sat down with the canvas, and that was the question that we asked. Who might want to use a drone in the agriculture business? And that's what we'd encourage you to do with your business right now as well. Another startup that I'm pretty familiar with is a concussion test. Okay, as we thought about who would be the customers for a technology that would allow you to diagnose a concussion, we wrote down a bunch of different titles of people who might want to use that concussion test. We started with athletic trainers, obviously, sports medicine doctors, clinics and urgent care doctors, neurologists, sports agents might want to use a concussion test, EMTs at a fire department, chiropractors, and even injury attorneys. Now the question is, did we follow the rules? Did we make all of these, are they all people? And actually, as we went through this process, the toughest one was fire department. I wrote down fire department, And then I had to stop myself and ask the question, who at the fire department would want to use this test? And so we thought, well, it's probably the EMTs, the emergency medical technicians, that are those first responders at a car accident or at a fire that are dealing with the injuries. And so we tried to make that as specific as we could. So now that you've done that and have adjusted all of your customer segments in a way that hopefully reflects what looks like a title on somebody's business card, let's talk a little bit about value propositions. And why I go from customer segments first to value propositions second is because I think it's easier to look at those customer segments and say, okay, of these people, why would they want to use my product? And there's a whole bunch of questions there in your yellow section of that box that you can look at. But for me, it's just easier to say, okay, why would these people want to use my product? So I want you to just take a couple of minutes and fill out that section of your business model canvas and try to answer that question, why would these people want to use my product? And while you're doing that, we'll take a look at our drone company again. So as we looked at all of our customer segments, we said, what value or what is the reason why those groups in the agriculture community would want to use a drone? And we said, well, they might be able to check on the pollination of their tree crops. They might be able to check their crops faster. They might be able to access remote areas of their farm. One that we had there that many of you will have is we can save our customers time and we can save them money. There's a certain soybean rust that is really aggressive that our farmers might want to use a drone to check. And so we talk about the soybean rust that they can use the drone to check their crops 3 times as often as they normally would. We also realized that you can see things from the air oftentimes that you can't see from the ground. And so some of our customers might want to do that. And even if you have the right technology, like ultraviolet or infrared cameras, you could use a drone to detect things that, like fungus or diseases that your crops might have. So all of these things are things that a drone can do that a regular crop or a farmer or a crop monitor wouldn't be able to do. And we thought those were good values for our company. Now here's the trick with value propositions. We know that all of you can save time and save money with your technology. Unfortunately, when it comes time to actually start this business and try to make some money doing it, you're going to find that your customers are not going to be satisfied with just saving them time and saving them money. And so with the value proposition box, we really want to find a way to quantify everything that's in this value proposition. And quite honestly, if you can't put a number on some of these value propositions, then it may not be worth it. The customer's not going to listen either. And so you really have to spend time thinking, can I put a number, can I give data on every one of these value propositions that then translates to a customer being interested in opening their wallet and paying me for the service or technology that I offer them? So when we look at the pollination of a tree crop, we're going to ask ourselves, how much better is the pollination? Maybe it's 22%. If I look at the speed of how fast I can check my crops, if I'm on a four-wheeler, I can probably only go, on that ATV, go 20 miles an hour down that field, where my drone can go 50 miles an hour. That may not, right now, it's just a guess, right? But what we know is that we have to find a way to put a number on the value propositions. How much easier is it to access certain remote areas of the farm? I don't know. I haven't figured out a way to put a number on that yet, but I'll keep working on that. It may not come to me right away. How much time can I save? How much money can I save? That's something that requires a lot of research, and it's going to take us time to figure that out. So if you don't know that right now, that's okay. The important part is that you have to figure out, hey, this is something that my customers will want to know if they're going to buy from me. How much time can they save? How much money can they save? If I'm checking my crops, how much more often can I check them? I can check them every day if I have a drone, because it's automated. It's GPS powered. I press go and off it goes. That's going to be really convenient. That's something that I can sell my customers. If I can see things from the air that I can't see from the ground, then how many more things can I see? What can I see from the air that I can't see from the ground? How much faster can I see those diseases that are affecting my crops? How many more diseases can I see with ultraviolet or infrared cameras? So the question is, on all these value propositions, you may not have numbers on all of these right now, but to get through this process, that's something that your customers are going to want to know. And you're going to have to figure out, how can I give data on every one of my value propositions? Saving time, saving money is not going to cut it. You've got to make sure that you can put a number on every value proposition. So here's the trick. I've talked about it a little bit, but I haven't really pointed it out. What you want to try to do, and the reason that I start with customer segments, is that you ought to be able to put a value proposition for every single customer segment. If you can't give a reason that customer would want to buy your product, then you should probably scratch them off or come back to them later. Every one of these value propositions has customers that are associated with them. And the yellow arrows that you see show how we assigned each customer segment a value proposition. Made it much easier for us to answer that question, why would our customers want to buy from us? So what's that give us? We take a little bit of time, we figure out these are the people that we think are our customers, these are the reasons that we think they would want to buy our product, and these become our hypotheses. Okay? One of our hypotheses look like this. Tree crop farmers will want 22% better pollination. Agronomists will want to cover fields or check fields faster. Montana wheat farmers will want to monitor the most remote parts of their field. Yuma lettuce farmers will want ultraviolet imaging to detect diseases 3 days before they can see it. Soybean farmers will want to check their fields for soybean rust multiple times a week. Now, all of these things seem like no-brainers. It seems like they're really obvious to a person who might have a drone company. And I agree, they are. But just like the scientific method, we want to apply that same philosophy to testing our business model, which is why we call this class test. These are all hypotheses right now. All you've done is you've looked at a canvas and you've spent 10 minutes thinking about who your customers are and thinking about the value propositions. And like any scientific process, we need to go out and prove these things. And the way we do that is by going out and doing customer discovery and talking to customers. Okay, where do we do? In the Steve Blank, Alexander Osterwalder philosophy, we get out of the building. There's no conclusions in this room. You may be an expert on the subject matter or the technology that you've developed, but you're not a customer, you're a provider. And so when we come to people and people come to us and say, hey, I've got a startup idea, and we ask them, well, who are your customers? And you say, everybody? That's obviously that's where most people start, but that's not the right answer. What we're looking for is a very specific group of customers, our beachhead market, that have a specific reason why they're going to open up our wallets and pay for the solutions that we can provide. Your customer segments have the right answers, just like everybody says the customer is always right. Before we even start our business, we want to follow that same philosophy. So go talk to them and find out what they need. Find out what their problems are. Find out what keeps them up at night. Ask them those exact questions. Don't sell your product. That's the most important thing. When you go out and talk to your customers, don't sell. You're just trying to find out if there's a reason, if there's a compelling need for them to purchase your product. Start here. Don't try to fill out the whole canvas. We're going to get to that over the next few weeks, over the next few classes. Look at your customer segments, look at your value propositions, and ask yourself the question, why would my customers buy from me? And the other piece of advice, for every hour you spend on the canvas, you should spend at least 10 hours out of the building talking to your customers. If you do what we did for the first 2 years that I used the Canvas, we had a big giant canvas on the wall. We stood in front of that canvas and we looked at the wall and we tried to put Post-its in the right box. That's not how you use the Canvas. You have to use it as a map. You go out, you talk to customers, and you figure out, are these the people that want my technology? And am I really solving a problem that's big enough that they'll open their wallet and pay me to solve it for them? Because just like everybody else, your customers have probably 4 or 5 things that they really have to deal with every week. They have 5 problems that they're focused on. And if you're not solving one of those top 5, it's probably not a big enough problem that they're going to worry about it. And so that's your task between now and next time, is to go out, talk to at least 5 to 10 customers, and you just ask them, what keeps you up at night? Tell me about your day. What do you do? Tell me about your line of work. Tell me about your business. And figure out what comes up. And if the problem that you're trying to solve isn't in that regular conversation, it's best to just let it be, because you learned out that your problem, your solution isn't solving a big enough problem. If you want to, if you need to prompt them a little bit and say, hey, tell me a little bit more about concussions. Tell me a little bit more about soybean rust. Tell me a little bit about powdery mildew on your lettuce. You can prompt them a little bit, but I would caution you, you're really trying to figure out how big is the problem that I'm trying to solve. So here's your homework. By next time, you're going to have a logo slide and tell us what your company does in 140 characters. Just like Twitter, right? If you can't tell us your company business in 140 characters, then we've got some work to do. And we also want to know how many interviews you've done since our last class. It should be at least 5 to 10. If you can do 15 or 20, that'd be even better. But the other trick is that we want these to be face-to-face. If you're not talking face-to-face with somebody, it's very difficult to hear the inflection in their voice, to see their facial expressions. If they get excited about what you're talking about, or there's a lot of pain in the problem, you're going to be able to see that face-to-face. Now, if it's somebody across the state or across the country, Skype is the second best thing. If you can do a phone interview, that's better than nothing. But to be a real entrepreneur, you've got to be willing to be in uncomfortable situations and get those interviews and try to get those face-to-face interviews with people that might want to use your product. Because if you can't do that on a simple interview, then you probably don't have the guts to go out and sell either. We also want to see you fill out the first few customer segments and the first few value propositions. So you're going to start with 8 to 12, 10 to 12. You may, after those first few interviews, you may already be crossing some of those customer segments off. And the same thing with value propositions. You may have a solution that nobody wants. Hey, believe me, the world is full of them, okay? I see them every day. So make sure that when you're going out, you're trying to hear those key words about those pain points from your customer. The other thing we want you to report is tell us a little bit about one of your hypotheses. Maybe it's customer segment number 1 and value proposition A. You're going to report in those homework presentations every week, here's what we thought, here's what we did, here's what we learned, and here's what we'll do next. Okay, and I'm going to give you an example, again, right out of our labs here at ASU. One of our student entrepreneurs. What did he think? He said, we thought college students would want an app to help them save money by finding pizza specials. Okay, that sounds like a good hypothesis for a college student startup. What did they do? Well, we stood outside the Memorial Union and we talked to 10 random students and asked them to tell us how often they order pizza. That's exactly what they should be doing, is just doing customer discovery. What did they learn? He said, we learned that pizza is usually ordered for meetings and events, and rarely do students order pizza on their own unless it's after a night out at the bars, okay? They're tired of pizza, right? what a huge discovery for this student startup. Here they had a solution based completely around pizza, and they found out, you know what? They're kind of had enough pizza. So what are they going to do next? They said, we haven't validated our pizza app concept yet. There's too few must-haves in our sample. We may need to look at different customer segments, so maybe college students are the wrong customer segment, or a different value proposition if we want to stay with with the customer segment of students. So either it's pizza or it's college students, but what this team learned is it's probably not both. Okay? So what they've determined is that this customer segment and this value proposition don't seem to be matching up. Okay? That is a huge, huge discovery based on 10 random students outside the union on campus. And yet, if this student had started that app, spent 3 or 4 months writing code, and then gone out and tried to make money on this app, it wasn't going to happen. And that's what we're trying to prevent. So have fun, good luck, get out of the building, and be ready to come back with some results for us next week.